Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't have much of a voice today, so thanks for your tolerance. I'd like to start, Ms. Jackson, by associating myself with the remarks of Mr. Cole. I've never heard the vitriol during town hall meetings that I hear towards the EPA from everyone from coal miners to ranchers to people who do believe climates are changing but believe that the EPA's heavy hand towards regulation of greenhouse gases will put us out of business and just send those jobs into countries that do not have environmental regulations that match ours, thereby causing greater pollution elsewhere in the world that will eventually get to us as well. Most of us have more confidence in our own country's ability to manage environmental issues with the latest technologies than is capable elsewhere in the world. So I think that we should concentrate on trying to keep jobs and technology in the United States so we can actually be the leader in those areas and export those technologies elsewhere in the world. So please do take careful heed of Mr. Cole's remarks. I believe they were right on target. I do have some questions for you, some of which I'll submit in writing. How many regulatory actions is your agency currently undertaking under the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act?
I don't have the exact number in front of me, and we classify our regulations according to their economic significance. I believe over the course of a year. Are you asking about maybe this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think we have 2 or 3 economically significant requirements, maybe 4 under the Clean Air Act that are in our regulatory calendar.
Are you complying with President Obama's January 18th executive order that requires agencies to take into account, and this is among other things, the costs of cumulative regulation?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have some data that you can share on that?
Well, we've been asked to do a look back, a retroactive look back of regulations to determine impacts, and we have begun that scoping process, but I don't have anything to share at this time.
And when will you?
I can't give you a date today, but we will get you a date.
And when you get us the date, could you also get us the information?
When we have it, we'll get
Yes.
you a date when we'll have information that we're able to
That would
share.
be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. What criteria do you use to determine when a regulatory change must follow the open rulemaking process or where guidance will suffice? I can tell you we hear a lot of concerns that guidance has broadened the scope of the Clean Water Act in ways that skirt the rulemaking process.
Well, we follow the Administrative Procedure Act in determining what should be a regulation. And of course, once we have a regulation, we've made a determination about a regulation, it goes through full public comment, usually a very long and detailed process. And we're pretty proud of the fact that we think we have a very transparent rulemaking process. The guidance issue are for those issues which generally, where EPA needs to offer guidance and clarification, doesn't rise to the level of a rule. And increasingly, EPA's guidance is subject to public comment as well. For example, you heard perhaps earlier the discussion about the mountaintop removal mining guidance, surface mining guidance.
Well, thank you. I want to follow up on the conversation on hydraulic fracking, something that occurs commonly in my state. And there's never been a connection proven, in spite of frequent revisiting of the hydraulic fracking issue, between the diminution in water quality and modern hydraulic fracking techniques. I'd also point out to those that are concerned about it that especially those that are concerned about the New York Times article, that the former director of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Quality and the former governor, Governor Rendell, submitted a rebuttal to the New York Times that the New York Times wouldn't print because it was too long. But it addressed many of the concerns that were raised in the article. And of course, the article also was not a peer-reviewed scientific expression of hydraulic fracking. So I'd refer those who are concerned about it to former Governor Rendell and the former director in the state. And following up on that, using that as a segue, can you tell me, what does the EPA do that states are incapable of doing through their own departments of environmental quality?
Well, ma'am, as you know, water moves between states and air moves between states and countries. And so I think EPA's most important role, over its history, EPA often helped states to set up their program. Now we've moved more into a role where we oversee programs to ensure that the Clean Water Act is implemented the same way, for example, across the country. But where I think EPA has made some tremendous progress and where we have work to do is on regional issues, on places, for example, the transport of pollution from the Midwest to the East, or water quality issues that are regional in nature that require the cooperation of several states. I think a national environmental body, as well as research. EPA has a very fulsome environmental research budget. Most states can't afford that. I used to run a state program, and we just didn't have the money to put in research we would like. We still set international standards for risk assessment. And our work still, I'm always amazed wherever I go internationally, almost every slide is, if it's an environmental issue, is attributed to many of the scientists and researchers at EPA. Car standards, I could go on and on and on, but the states are extremely important in the day-to-day implementation of our environmental laws. They write permits, they enforce the law. But the EPA's role is one of oversight as well as scientific knowledge and working on regional issues.
Do you believe that research is your highest priority expenditure at EPA?
Our mission is protection of public health and the environment. And so I wouldn't call it our highest priority, but I would say increasingly environmental issues are so complex that you need very, very good science. And so we spend a lot of money and a significant portion of our budget on science issues, whether in applied research or in grants to do research. Because
in making decisions about prioritizing your funding, do you look at what states can do versus what they cannot do or what you believe they're incapable of doing, and prioritize for the EPA to do those things that you believe that states are incapable of doing as well as EPA is capable of doing it?
Yeah, we have 7 priorities that I established at EPA. One of them is working in partnership with our states and tribes, because many of our managers, including myself, came from state government and know very well that there is a synergy, a synergistic relationship. There are also times, quite frankly, when we don't agree. And the laws carve out a role for EPA in implementation of the environmental laws that we must also uphold. We are ultimately accountable for implementation of those laws.
There are state and tribal groups that form commissions, such as the Grand Canyon Air Visibility, the Transport Commission. Mm-hmm. That's not the exact name of it, but it was the Western governors, the tribes near the Grand Canyon, and others who work diligently together to address air quality issues in the airshed around the Grand Canyon. And I know there are similar intra-state and intra-tribal, interagency efforts around the country. Do you look to those as a primary driver, or do you look more to the federal government as the primary driver?
No, of course, and in fact, those groups, if they're the ones I'm thinking about, are authorized under the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act realized that haze is a regional problem, visibility is a regional problem, and so there are several regional haze groups that protect Class 1 visibility areas around the country, and they are authorized under law, and we work very closely with them.
Since President Obama became president, it looks to me as if, in terms of percentage increases, the EPA has received the highest percentage increase in its budget. Do you agree?
Certainly, we received the highest increase of any EPA budget under President Obama in FY10, yes.
And so, as I understand, it was about 39% over the previous administration's budget, and that so your current proposed 13% cut really amounts to a 24% increase over previous EPA budgets. Do you agree with my math?
In top line, yes, it's essentially so, yes.
So you're still dealing with about a quarter increase over previous administration's budget.
With the very vast majority of that money going out to states, either for the Great Lakes or for water and wastewater infrastructure grants. What the president thought was very important was investing in water and wastewater infrastructure, but in a tough year, we've had to basically give some of that back, reluctantly, but we're part of the team, and we think that we have to make those tough choices.
And among those were the state revolving funds, the Safe Drinking Water League.
That's what I'm referring to.
Excuse me, I know you're being very generous, Mr. Chairman, with my 5 minutes, so I'll yield back. I do want to pursue that if there's another round. Thank you.